Right, let me spare you from some of Buhle's tears, as Wits University has been accused of giving preferential treatment to Miss South Africa, Shudufhadzo Musida, who was physically awarded her honours degree in international relations, while thousands of other students only graduated online. The Student Representative Council says students were robbed of the opportunity to walk across the graduation stage in cap and gowns due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Musida says she had an opportunity to chat to the Wits Vice-Chancellor, Professor Zeblon Vilakazi, and she went for it in her graduation attire. Now, according to Musida, Vilakazi was keen to hear her views on mental health and learn about the initiatives that she had undertaken during her reign as Miss South Africa. To weigh in on this, we're joined now by the president of the SRC at Wits University Mpendulo Mfeka. Mpendulo, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. Witsies are left fuming after they saw Miss SA graduate in a way that they wish they could graduate in. What are your remarks around this?
So, good morning to you and good morning to your viewers at home. But first and foremost, I think we must make it categorically clear that we welcome and celebrate the graduation of Shudufhadzo. It's something which I think should be celebrated by every person in the country, and she has earned her degree very well. But what we reject and we condemn is the monopolization of the Great Hall in terms of graduation. We can't at any point be allowing for some to graduate and some not to graduate. We're not in an animal farm of some sort of saying there's a hierarchy of graduations that should take place. We understand there's COVID regulations that are currently underway, and those COVID regulations that are currently underway should apply to everyone and not selectively to others and not to some. So we reject the monopolization of the Great Hall. It can't be that some people are allowed to go through it and some are not. We call for a standardization and a manner in which our students will graduate in a dignified manner. And we would also know that everyone who's gotten a degree in whichever institution has hard-earned it and should be treated in the same way as it comes our regards graduation.
Now, the Miss SA organization, it's being reported that the organization says there was no preferential treatment of Shudufhadzo during her graduation because she actually was attending the ceremony virtually along with hundreds of thousands of others, and happened to then later meet with the VC to discuss mental health. What would you say to that?
So the question is, so they had to meet in the Great Hall and she had to wear her graduation gown and everything. And I would understand the Vice Chancellor has an office at the 11th floor. So their meeting could have happened there. And I don't know how it ended up at the Great Hall. Perhaps the organization can also explain how the meeting ended up in the Great Hall and how is it that her gown was hooked inside the Great Hall, because the two do not link.
This has clearly evoked a lot of emotion, especially speaking about the significance of being in the Great Hall when you graduate. And it also reflects on the current times that we're in. Unprecedented times, COVID-19, a pandemic, lockdown restrictions, which really prohibit a lot of movement. Let's talk about the emotional toll of students during this time, which has really resulted in the outrage that we're seeing from Witsies around this graduation ceremony.
So, as you would know, I think you've seen over the past few months, we've had at least 6 students who've attempted to kill themselves, who've attempted to commit suicide, rather. And we've had a few students who actually committed suicide. And not long ago, we were reporting a number of mental health cases. These degrees come hard-earned. It's not something that comes from the street. People don't climb a tree and get a degree. They come hard-earned. And more than anything, they are no longer the degrees of those students that earn them. These are now degrees of the families that are in Soweto, families that are in rural Eastern Cape, rural KZN, and Mpumalanga. So this is bigger than just the individual who acquires the degree at this point. It's beyond the particular individual. It's now about the family. We have first-generation graduates. We have orphans, child-headed families who are graduating and are getting the degree for the first time. So if we're going to joke around about the hard-earned work of these particular students, then we get shocked when people break down. It's because they don't celebrate the little achievements like they acquire over the years. So at this point in time, the emotional part of it, I must add that, look, as a country, we can't afford to be, and as a university in particular, we can't afford to be playing an animal farm on students to say these ones can celebrate, these ones can't celebrate, because we do not know at the depth we should the harsh realities that students go through at Wits University as they acquire their degrees.
Professor Zebulon Vilakazi had said that the meeting was to discuss some of the mental health initiatives that Miss South Africa has taken on. That being a very important topic, is that something that would be of interest to you in expanding the discussion around mental health involving Miss South Africa?
So I think we must be honest here. We were the first ones who went to the front line and said mental health is a crisis in university spaces and we need to put systems in place. We were the first ones who said mental health is a crisis at Wits. We need to have a 24-hour line. We were the first ones who said mental health is a crisis at Wits. Every night there's a student who attempts to commit suicide. Every night there's a student who has a mental breakdown. We were the first ones who said we want a conversation around this at Wits University. Now, it makes no sense for that conversation to happen without us as the student body, right? Even if it's not in the presence of, even if it's not in the absence of whatever it may be, we can't allow for such a conversation to happen without the student body. And it's quite ironic to say at this point in time when we've had so many suicide attempts, we've went through exams, only then does the university want to have the conversation with a Miss SA and not necessarily involving the victims of these mental health breakdowns. It really is, it's shocking to say the least.
And how should the university be meeting students halfway when it comes to this very important element that you raise?
I've just cited a number of proposals we've made. We want a mental health policy, which we're currently working on as the SRC, to say, look, there needs to be a mental health policy that is sensitive to students, first online and offline, because there will be a post-COVID era, and we need to reimagine that. How will that look, and how will mental health be addressed in that manner? First and foremost, we want a mental health policy that will be maintained and agreed to by the university. Second, there needs to be systems in place which are approved by qualified psychologists and psychiatrists.
And when it comes to the topic of mental health, I mean, it's not something very comfortable to speak about. And as you give a breakdown of some of the encounters and some of the numbers you've seen of students committing suicide and not really coping with the current status of the pandemic being a factor and other mental illnesses, you know, what do you think should stand out in the call for these initiatives that you make when it comes to raising awareness of mental health and demystifying some of the myths around who doesn't qualify to be a victim?
So I think foremost what should stand out, right, above all, is first the demystification of mental health, right? I mean, we would very well be aware that mental health is still a taboo topic to discuss in some circles, in our Black communities in particular, and so forth and so on, right? And mental health is not a form of, you are not crazy if you are having a mental health crisis of some sort, and we need to make that clear, and there needs to be more education around that. So I think foremost, there needs to be an intensive effort to try and educate people about it, and educate people not only in university spaces, but beyond the university space, into the classroom, I mean, into the communities, and into the social spaces that people be.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. President of the SRC at Wits University Mpendulo Mfeka, giving reaction to news of the graduation that, you know, the virtual graduation as opposed to the walk-in that Miss South Africa, well, the interactions that we saw on social media, and really weighing in there on the very serious topic of mental health.